The air outside was crisp, biting with winter's edge, but Cassandra Blake barely noticed. She stepped through the glass doors of the downtown Blake and Hartman jewelry store quietly, her breath visible in the morning cold. Her long wool coat swept just above her boots, and her natural hair was pulled back neatly. No flashy accessories, no loud entrance, just a woman walking into a place she helped build from nothing. But inside, the atmosphere shifted almost instantly. The bell chimed overhead, and heads turned, not in recognition, but in judgment. Cassandra glanced around the showroom. It looked pristine. Modern lighting, velvet-lined cases. The holiday collection was displayed front and center. She had helped design several of the signature pieces. And yet, not a single employee seemed to know who she was. Jessica, a sharply dressed young sales associate with sleek hair and too much lip gloss, narrowed her eyes the moment Cassandra stepped in. She didn't smile, didn't offer help. Instead, she leaned against the counter and said, "Just so you know, we don't let people try on merchandise unless they're actually purchasing." Cassandra blinked slowly, her voice measured. "I helped design that necklace," she said softly, gesturing to a gold-laced diamond piece encased under glass. Jessica chuckled, a short, dismissive sound. "Right," she said, "and I'm Beyoncé's cousin." Then louder, as if for the benefit of other shoppers, she added, "Please don't make a scene, okay?" Cassandra looked away, jaw tight, breath steady. She had faced worse in boardrooms. She turned toward another display, just trying to take it in. A part of her was stinging already, but she didn't speak. Not yet. A few moments later, another employee approached. This one older, maybe in his early 50s. Assistant manager, judging by his badge. He glanced at Jessica, then at Cassandra, and stepped forward with a rehearsed tone. "Ma'am, you're making our other guests uncomfortable. If you need assistance, you'll have to wait outside." Cassandra took a breath, looked the man directly in the eyes, and asked calmly, "Is your store manager available?" The man adjusted his tie awkwardly. "He's busy at the moment. I can take a message." "I'd prefer to speak with him," she said evenly, still not raising her voice. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, swiping it open with practiced ease. Jessica crossed her arms. "Okay, you know what? This is enough. If you don't leave, I'll call security." Cassandra looked at her for a long moment. "Go ahead," she said. Jessica didn't hesitate. Within minutes, a tall security guard appeared at the entrance, clipboard in hand, eyes already scanning for trouble. His gaze locked onto Cassandra. "Ma'am," he said firmly, but not aggressively, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside with me for a moment." Cassandra turned toward him. She studied his face. He looked confused, maybe even hesitant, but he was doing his job. "What's your name?" she asked quietly. He blinked. "Devin." She nodded, then smiled gently, her voice calm and composed. "You might want to wait 5 minutes, Devin." He furrowed his brow. "I'm sorry?" She looked past him out through the glass doors as a black car pulled up just outside. Her phone was still in her hand, screen unlocked. And just then, something began to shift. But no one in that room realized. The 5 minutes had just begun. Cassandra wasn't born into the world of velvet boxes and polished diamonds. Her earliest memories were of janitor keys clinking on her mother's belt loop, echoing through silent department stores long after closing hours. While other kids were asleep, she'd sit quietly in the cleaning supply closet with a book or a sketch pad, waiting for her mother to finish scrubbing footprints off marble floors. Every once in a while, her mother would take a break and let her walk the aisles. That's when young Cassandra would wander over to the jewelry counter, her small hands pressed to the glass, eyes wide with wonder. Not because she wanted to wear the pieces, but because she imagined making them, drawing them, giving them meaning. She was the kind of girl who believed in quiet things, who understood that hard work was not optional, and dreams were not handed to people like her. Still, she dreamed anyway. College came with struggle. Scholarships barely covered what needed covering. Cassandra juggled coursework with receptionist jobs, temp gigs, and more than a few nights where dinner was cup noodles and stolen Wi-Fi. But every night, no matter how tired she was, she'd sketch. Cufflinks with charm bracelets, anklets with tiny carvings that told stories. She filled notebook after notebook, believing that someday someone would see. That someone came in the form of a boutique owner in Atlanta, a middle-aged Haitian woman named Mireille, who had seen Cassandra sketching during her lunch break and asked to see her designs. 2 weeks later, 5 handmade bracelets sat in Mireille's storefront. 3 sold on the first day. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fast, but it was a start. What followed was a slow climb, a feature on a Black-owned fashion blog, a small collaboration with a vegan leather bag designer. Then a private investor who had seen her work and wanted in. He offered full funding, but she held firm. 51% was non-negotiable. If this was going to carry her name, it was going to carry her values. Thus, Blake and Hartman Fine Jewelry was born. She didn't just build a brand, she built opportunity. Cassandra hired women who looked like her, who had stories like hers. Former foster kids, single moms, first-gen graduates. She set up training programs and made sure every employee learned the meaning behind the pieces. Legacy, voice, power. But success brings shifts. With expansion came structure. With structure came delegation. Hartman, her business partner, began hiring people through his own network. More polished resumes, more corporate experience, less community soul. Cassandra didn't argue. She wanted to believe both worlds could coexist. Over time, she became more involved in design and strategy and less in daily operations. She still visited stores on occasion, but with less frequency. Eventually, she stopped being recognized by some of her newer employees. Still, she didn't mind, until complaints began to surface. They came slowly at first. A woman from Detroit emailed to say her daughter had been followed through a store. Another mentioned being ignored for 10 minutes while white customers were greeted. Cassandra flagged the incidents, but the responses were vague. Isolated miscommunication, the manager said. We'll look into it. She wanted to believe that was true, but the email she received last week hit differently. It was short, honest. From a middle-aged woman named Rita, I visited your store last week and your staff treated me like I was invisible. Do you still run this place, Ms. Blake? I used to love shopping there, but something's changed. Cassandra read it 3 times. That morning, before stepping into the store, she sat in her car and stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She wasn't wearing luxury, no diamonds, no designer bag, just herself. The woman who once sketched dreams in the margins of time. She reached into the glove box and pulled out a small folder. Inside it were the original partnership papers. Her name, Cassandra R. Blake, was written above the seal. For a long time she sat still, not in anger, not in fear, but in clarity. Because this wasn't just about disrespect anymore. This was about something deeper. How an empire she built in her image was slowly forgetting that image. And that was the moment she decided. Time to remind them who she was. Back in the store, time seemed to slow around Cassandra as footsteps approached from the hallway behind the staff counter. She didn't turn right away. She didn't need to. She already knew who it was. Rick, manager, early 30s, sharp haircut, expensive shoes, the kind of smug air worn by someone who believed position was power. He came in adjusting his cufflinks like he'd been interrupted from something far more important than dealing with what he assumed was a disturbance. I'm Rick, he announced without offering a handshake. We've already called someone to escort you out, so if you could just... Cassandra looked at him with an expression so calm it bordered on amused. Rick raised a brow. Did you hear me? She nodded, then slowly raised her phone again, this time tapping on her screen to start a video call. A few curious glances from the other staff. Jessica stood nearby, her arms crossed now with slightly less confidence. A face appeared on Cassandra's screen, her business partner, David Hartman, mid-40s, sharp suit, direct. Cass, he said, slightly confused. You're at the downtown store? Cassandra turned the screen toward Rick, her voice smooth and neutral. Say hello to Rick. Hartman squinted through the screen, then his entire expression changed. His jaw tightened. His voice came hard and clear. Rick, that's Cassandra Blake. The Cassandra. What the hell is going on? Rick's mouth opened, but no words came. His skin flushed red from neck to ears. Sweat pooled at his temples. Jessica's face drained of color. Cassandra ended the call without another word. The entire store had gone still. You know, she said gently, her tone dangerously composed, you had every chance to treat people with decency, with basic respect. You failed. She glanced briefly at the necklace behind the glass, the one Jessica had dismissed earlier. This is my store, she continued, and this is your last shift. Rick's mouth twitched. Wait. No, she said, cutting him off. There's no discussion. I've seen enough. Jessica tried to step in. I didn't know who you were. Cassandra turned to her. That's exactly the problem. Jessica looked down, her bravado collapsing into shame. The security guard, Devon, stood awkwardly by the door watching it unfold. Cassandra looked at him, her voice softer now. You were just doing your job. No harm done. Thank you, Devon. He gave a small nod, relieved and maybe a little awestruck. Around the showroom, a few other employees had stopped pretending to work. Some watched in complete silence. A young woman behind the register, maybe in her mid-20s, slowly approached Cassandra. Her hands were clasped nervously in front of her apron. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but do you really own this place? Cassandra turned to her, her face softening for the first time all morning. Yes, she said, and I remember your face. You greeted me when I walked in. You smiled. You didn't assume. The cashier nodded slowly, cheeks flushing. Cassandra added, What's your name? Layla. Cassandra smiled. Thank you, Layla. I'll remember that. Rick and Aunt Jessica stood frozen, knowing this was more than just an embarrassing moment. This was exposure, accountability, and they were on the wrong end of it. Cassandra stepped forward toward the main counter, pulled out a set of gold-plated keys from her coat pocket, and placed them down. For a moment, nobody breathed. This place started with my sketches in a spiral notebook, she said aloud, speaking more to the room than to any one person. Somewhere along the way, it forgot that. She looked around at the remaining staff. But that changes today. Later that afternoon, after the dust had settled and the doors were locked for a private session, the staff gathered inside the store's back room. The usual chatter and whispered judgments had been replaced with silence, the kind of silence that comes when people are unsure of what happens next. Some were nervous, a few were defensive. Most were simply waiting to understand who Cassandra Blake really was beyond the headlines and rumors. She stood at the front, no longer just a mysterious customer or a name on company emails. This was the founder, present, grounded, and very much in control. I want to thank everyone who stayed, she began, voice calm but authoritative. Today wasn't about catching anyone off guard. It was about seeing this place through the eyes of a stranger. No one moved. Even the assistant manager from earlier had taken a quiet seat near the back, noticeably humbled. Cassandra clicked a remote, and a slide appeared on the screen behind her. Respect isn't optional. She continued, starting this week, we're launching a full internal audit of our store culture, every branch. You'll receive an anonymous link to submit any feedback. Your experience here, your concerns, things that have gone unspoken. Several staff members exchanged quick glances. This wasn't performative. It felt real. We're also opening a public feedback channel for customers. Too many voices have been dismissed. Not anymore. Then Cassandra turned to the two women seated on the side. Layla, the soft-spoken cashier who greeted her kindly, and Dana, a longtime employee who'd handled dozens of complaints gracefully over the years. Effective immediately, Cassandra said. You're both being promoted. Your kindness hasn't gone unnoticed. And it's time that this company reflects the values it was built on. Tears welled in Layla's eyes, but she held her composure. Dana looked stunned, mouthing a quiet thank you. Cassandra nodded once and took a deep breath before holding up a small brass plaque with an inscription etched in elegant script. She read it aloud. No one who enters this space should ever feel small. This plaque, she said, will be installed in every location, right near the entrance, so no one forgets why we're here. Applause followed. Not forced, not polite, but genuine. It was the sound of something shifting. Later that week, Cassandra sat quietly inside a private lounge of the flagship store, waiting for a woman named Rita, the same Rita who had written the email that changed everything. When she arrived, modestly dressed, mid-50s, still unsure if it was all real, Cassandra stood and greeted her with warmth. You didn't just point out a problem, she said. You reminded me of who I built this for. Cassandra gave her a tour of the new collections, let her try on anything she wanted. And when Rita hesitated at the price tags, Cassandra gently placed a velvet box into her hands. Inside was a bracelet from Cassandra's first handmade line, with small stones representing strength, dignity, and protection. "This one's not for sale," Cassandra said. "It's for you." Rita held the bracelet like it was made of something far more precious than gold. As Cassandra walked her out and said goodbye, she caught sight of someone near the doorway. Devin, the security guard from earlier that week. He stood there in uniform, posture straight, watching with a faint grin. As she passed him, he raised a two-finger salute with a playful twinkle in his eye. "Morning, boss." Cassandra smiled wide. "I'm just here to make sure everyone gets treated right." She stepped out into the sunlight, not as a visitor, not as a forgotten name, but as the woman who had returned to her kingdom and reclaimed it with quiet fire.